Eat this! Here you go! Fire! Yo! Go! You're late! Eat this, loser! You're dead! It's over! You're dead! It's over! You're dead! Fire! Now the speed! There's no escape! Eat this, loser! Turbo! Just try and dodge! Max power! Here's my special! Oh, it's on now! Fire! Die! That was weak. Max power! Just try and dodge! You're trash! Max power! No mercy! Turbo! Dumbass! Hold on! There's no escape! I gotcha! Burn! Here we go! Not yet! Die! I gotcha! Yo! Taste the ground! No mercy! Just try and dodge! Explode! Just try and dodge! Here's my special! Try and stop me! Here's my special! Fire!
Just
Oh,
stand
it's
back
on now.
and leave this to me. Just stand.
Oh, it's on now! Max power! Turbo! No mercy! Turbo! No mercy! Just try and dodge! Max power! Explode! Just try and dodge! What the hell? Turbo! Max power! No mercy! Ain't working. You're trapped! No mercy! Just try and dodge!
No problem!
Max power! No mercy! Explode! You're dead! What the hell? Max power! Here's my special! Ain't working. No mercy! Die! There's no escape! Yo. You won't get away! Die! Eat this, loser! There's no escape! There's no escape! Now the speed! Max power! Not yet! Try and stop me! No mercy!
Protection!
Yo.
Protection!
Now the speed! Yo. Turbo! Max power! Die! The hell? Now the speed! You're dead! Working! Max power! Here's my special! Taste the ground! Try and stop me! Get away! Turbo! Just try and dodge!
Let's get some more!
There's no escape! You baby! Turbo! There's no escape! No mercy! There's no escape! Alright, level up! Aiming for you!
I'm under attack!
Away! Eat this!
Being attacked by
Now
an
the
enemy!
focus fire!
Everyone's in
Enemy
the
attacking!
safe
We're messing
area!
around! Come on, keep up! Away! I'll surpass All Might! Now the speed! Damn it! Fine, I gotcha! I found an evacuation. Max power!
I block.
How did you? Here's my special! No mercy! You're trash! Max power! You won't get away! Try and stop me! Dark!
I won't let you. All right. You can't. Stay right. Can't move. My legs. What's this? Level up. Duck. Plus Ultra. Stay down, Hound. You better be ready. Stay right there. You're mine. As far as it stretches.
Help me,
Give up
idiot.
already.
I can't be out.
I'll take that.
Plus Ultra! Erase this! Ooh. Through. Enjoy! No escape! It's what you've all been waiting for! You're dead! An idle box appeared! Try and stop me! Get set!